to the Next Drum Method sessions. Today we're going to be going over how to tune your guitar by ear and how you can even use the traditional doorbell and the theme song from Jaws to help you do so. All right, welcome back to Jam Fast. So today we're going to be talking about the fifth core element in our strum method. In the acronym STRUM, S-T-R-U-M, is for master ear training. And as I said, this is the most important critical element of mastering your guitar, and it's where all of the other elements come together. It's where we use our reading fretboard patterns, transitioning smoothly, understanding how to read and write different chord charts, chord tabs, understanding rhythm and strumming. And after we've got a basis, a foundation of all of those other core elements, our ear is going to be what puts them all together and allows us to sit down and pick up a song, hear it on the radio, and be able just to start pulling from that toolbox from the other four elements, the S-T-R-U, and then we're going to use our ear, M, master ear training, to pull from all of those to make the song sound like how we want it to. So there's a lot to unpack in mastering your ear training, and over the next few months we're going to look at how to hear different intervals so that you'll know kind of what your minor thirds are, what your fifths are, what your fourths are, just so when you're listening to music you can kind of tell what are those chord progressions. That just went up a fifth, that just went down a third. There are some tricks that I'm going to give you for that. We're going to go over some ear training that's going to help you distinguish how to hear different strumming patterns when listening to songs. There's just a million things that we're going to be unpacking in regards to how we can use our ear to develop all of those first four core principles. But for today, we're just going to be boiling it down to how do we tune our guitar by ear. As I said, it is important, nay, essential, that we know how to tune our guitars because everything else is negligible if our guitars aren't in tune. So obviously we got the tuner, and you might be saying to yourself, why am I spending all this time learning how to tune a guitar by ear when we have apps that do this for us? We have tuners. Well, there's a lot of reasons, and the main reason is, what if we just don't have any of those tools? Does that mean that we don't have the ability to play the guitar? So I'm going to give you a couple of rules of thumb today to think back on when you're trying to tune your guitar up by ear. Or maybe you're sitting around in a circle and of musicians, and someone who's taking the lead and wanting to play a specific song, and they don't want to maybe tune to a tuner, or they're just going off. They think that their guitar is in tune, but your guitars sound different from each other. How do you tune to their guitar so that you guys can jam together? So it's essential that we can use our ear to tune our guitar as just another tool to make sure that we are properly in tune before we move forward with jamming or learning new techniques or developing our own songs or what have you. So check my notes here. So in regards to where to start with tuning your guitar by ear. So first things first is we need a bass line. We need something to tune the rest of our guitar to. So we're going to be using a process called relative tuning. We kind of started looking a little bit into this a week ago when looking at fretboard patterns. You might recall we were looking at how the fifth fret of one string becomes the same note value as the next string up, played openly. So the fifth fret of the sixth string is the same note in A as our fifth string, played openly. And we were looking at that as a fretboard pattern, so that every 5 frets of one string starts over on the next string. So instead of going from 0 up to 12 here, we can go 0 to 12 here by just using that repetitive pattern. Up 5 frets starts the next string, up 5 frets starts the next string. But in today's video, we're going to be looking at how to use relative tuning in its practicality of tuning our instrument. So if we know that the 5th fret of one string, hence our 6th string on the 5th fret is an A, becomes the A note of our 5th string played openly, how do we make sure that our E, our 6th string, is correct in the first place? Because if every string we tune by ear is based off of the first string, well, then we got to make sure that our E is in tune. So we're going to consider that as guitarists our baseline note, our E string, our low E. So there's a couple ways to do this. First, easiest way is if you're jamming with someone on the piano, just ask them to play a low E note, and they'll plunk a low E note, and then you just got to use your ear to use your tuner knob and tune it to match the same pitch as their low E. I'm going to get into how to use our ear to do that in a second, but that's simply the first way that we're going to do it. If we're playing with someone who's playing with the piano, or if we have a piano in our house, hit that low E note, which if you don't know where the low E note is on a piano, when you're looking at a piano, there's all those black keys, and they're in a pattern of 3 black keys, 2 black keys, 3 black keys, 2 black keys. It is the first white key to the right of 2 black keys. So if you're looking at all those patterns on a piano, the area where you see 2 black keys, it's the first white note to the right of the second black key in that 2 black key pattern. That's going to be your E. And just go a little bit lower if you're sitting at a piano where your left hand is, plunk that low E, and it should match with your 6th string. If it doesn't, that's our goal, to set our bass line to that note. So then after you have your bass line, we're going to be able to tune all the rest of our strings. So what if you don't have a piano player? Well, the other easiest way to do it is if you're jamming with a buddy who's got a guitar, ask them what their low E note is. Maybe they're off by a little bit, but as long as their guitar is in tune to their low E, and then you match with their low E, both of you have the same bass line starting note. And then when you use your ear to tune the rest of your guitar, at least your 2 guitars are going to be tuned together, so that when you guys are jamming, if you're doing a little solo lead line over their chord progression, at least your guys' guitars will be in tune. Obviously, if you have a tuner, that's going to be an easy way to work out that E note. Lastly, if you don't have a piano nearby, if you don't have someone jamming with you who's on a piano, if you don't have another jamming partner who's on a guitar, and you don't have a tuner yourself, simply just pluck your E note, and for the case of that day's jam session, that's going to be your bass line. Because as long as your guitar is in tune, at least when you play that G chord, everything sounds in tune. Now here's a little fun fact. In orchestras, they actually, I don't know if you've ever been to an orchestra before, but at the very beginning, before even the first note is played, there's kind of this swell of a cacophony of noise where all of the different musicians are all tuning. And you can kind of hear all of the bows and all of the horns all coming to the same note. Well, that same note that they're coming to is actually our 5th string, an A note. The reason is because the A note is the only note that every musical instrument ever created has an A note. A lot of other instruments don't even have an E note. They don't have a G note, but every instrument has an A note, which is also 443 hertz for us music nerds, which is just a more complex way of explaining. Hertz explains how to measure frequency, or waves that are in the air, the wavelengths. And 443 hertz is the amount of wavelengths in the air that produces the A pitch. So we might remember from a while back, or if you've gotten this far in the complete course, relative tuning is the 5th fret of one string becomes the next string down played openly. So again, 5th fret of our 6th string is an A note, which is also the 5th string played openly. an A. So you may be asking yourself, how do I know if it's in pitch, if it's lower, or if it's above? Lower is going to be flatter, above is going to be sharper. So the goal here is to make sure that both of these notes are the same exact pitch. So I always play them sequentially, one after the other. Don't play them together at first. Hit one, hit the other. Hit one, hit the other. If you're a singer, we'll get into singing a few weeks down the road to match your voice with your guitar. But if you are a singer and you can match pitch, which is a skill, try to sing it and see if your voice moves when you hit that next note. So if your voice matches and it doesn't waver, it goes up or down, it's going to be the same pitch. And then I play them together. And the idea is for both of those strings, when played in unison, they sound like one string, like one note. So now if I was out of pitch, let's say I was down here, and I try to sing, or if I can't sing, if I'm just listening and they don't sound the same, you're going to hear this sonar or a wah, 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 or just this dissonant sound that just kind of makes you cringe. You might hear there's a little bit of a shaking, and the reason from a technical perspective is they are on different wavelengths. They're sending out different frequencies in the air. So if I'm playing this A, which is 443 hertz, and then I play this one, which is, I just tuned purposefully out of tune, so we'll say it's about 425 hertz, you can hear how the wavelengths are different. And so you could just kind of imagine one wavelength's going like this, the other is going like this. If you hear them together, it just doesn't sound good. So now our trick that I started the video out with, saying that we're going to be able to use Jaws theme song and a common doorbell to help us distinguish, are we flat and therefore have to use our tuner knob to sharpen or tune up to the note? Or are we sharp? Are we too high and above the pitch and need to come down to it? So in this case, I purposefully just tuned my guitar out of tune. And so I'm going to hear, by playing the notes sequentially, does it sound like a doorbell? Ding dong, bong dong. The first note is a higher pitch than the second one. We can all agree on that, right? So here, do it with me right now if you know what a common doorbell sounds like. Ding dong. Do that with me. Ding dong. You can hear that first pitch is higher. Ding. The second pitch, dong, is lower. So if it sounds like a doorbell, we're flat. Okay? So I'm going to do it really quickly. Pushing down on the 5th fret of the 6th string. Here it kind of sounds like a doorbell. Bing bong. Bing bong. So first note is higher, second note is lower. We want them to be equal. So I'm going to bring that 5th string and I'm going to sharpen it. So I'm going to, again, hit that 6th string, hit the 5th string, and then I'm going to bring my left hand up to that 5th string tuner knob and sharpen until those pitch equalize. And I got to use my ear to find, and I can hear that pitch raising, but then I got to come back to it. I could still hear, and your ear will get better and better over time, I could still hear a little bit of difference in frequency, a little bit of a wah-wah noise. So again, I got to go until I think they're the same, and then I'm going to pluck them together to make sure it sounds like one string. Still a little off, isn't it? They're very close, but it's a little, just a hair off. And there they are. So now I've successfully brought my 5th string, I've sharpened it up by using the tuner knob and sharpening that string to match until both the 6th and 5th string sound the same. So now what if I go and I go to tune my instrument and the 2nd string doesn't sound like a doorknob? Well, it's going to be the other side. It's going to be sounding more like the theme song of Jaws. Maybe you haven't seen the movie before. I haven't seen it in like 20 years, but we all know the theme song. Ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. The first note is lower than the second note. Ba-dum, da, down, up, down, up. So if I go to tune my instrument, again, pushing down on the 5th fret of the 6th string, and then I hit that 5th string, and it sounds more like the Jaws theme song. It's up in pitch. Well, we now have just distinguished that our 5th string is too sharp. It's too high in pitch, and we got to go back to that tuner knob and tune down to match our 6th string. I'm turning clockwise to the right to come down in pitch until again they sound in unison. So here's a little fun fact though for you. When you tune your guitar down to match a pitch like I just did, I was sharp on my 5th string and I tuned it down to come down to match the 6th string. The guitar has an easier time of slipping out of tune on that string moving forward. And the reason just has to do with the tautness around that tuner knob pin up here. When you tune down to a note, after playing for a day or two or a couple of songs, the guitar has, again, an easier time of slipping out of tune rather than tuning up to a note. When you're cranking and strengthening and tightening those strings to come up to the right pitch, it tends to hold in place for a longer duration, more jamming and playing time until your strings go out of tune. So to recap, we want to make sure the 5th fret of one string sounds the exact same as the next string by matching their wavelengths using our ear. And we do that by hearing this dissonant, sonar effect or wah-wah noise tells us it's out of tune. If it's out of tune, it can either be too low, flat, or it could be too high, sharp. We have just learned that we can distinguish if it's flat, if it sounds more like a doorbell. Ding dong, where the first note is higher than the second. We've distinguished that 2nd string could be sharp if it sounds more like the Jaws theme song. Ba-dum, ba-dum, where the first note is lower than the second. If that's the case, we don't just want to tune down to match that string. We don't want to flatten that sharp note to come down, but we actually want to go even below it, flatten it so that the note is actually flat, and then come back up to match the same pitch so that our guitars stay in tune for longer. So that's how we're going to use relative tuning, using our ear, matching wavelengths, using either the doorbell if it's flat or the Jaws theme song if it's sharp, in order to know if we need to sharpen or flat our tuner knobs to properly adjust the other strings, to base them all off of a bass line that we're going to use as our E. We're going to find the E from a piano player, our fellow jammer, or a tuner. If we're in an orchestra, they're going to give us our 5th string, our A. I think we're looking good. If you want to practice this in the future, we have an amazing video on this in our complete course. It's in level 7 under the Jam Trick video, relative tuning. It'll even show you some wavelengths if that's kind of a little over your head, but maybe looking at a video or an image of what a wavelength looks like and how to match those up would help you. So again, level 7, the jam trick video is going to show you and recover all of this relative tuning. But other than that, we're going to move forward and forward using our ear to develop and strengthen all of these other core elements so that you could eventually sit down and play any song that you want to. So with that being said, I hope you got a lot from this video. If you have any questions, comment in the comment section below or send me a personal email and I'll get back to you. Other than that, keep jamming, jammers.